Hello and welcome. I'm Miriam Cates and this is GBN Originals. Let me begin today by presenting you with some concerning figures. By 2032, a mere 7 years from now, our population is projected to swell to a staggering 72.5 million people. This represents an increase of 7.3% from a decade earlier. That's nearly 5 million additional people calling Britain their home. But here's the crux of the matter. This growth is not organic. It's not the result of a baby boom or a sudden surge in our birth rates. No, the entirety of this net population growth will be driven by the arrival of nearly 10 million migrants to our shores. Let that sink in for a moment. 10 million. That's the equivalent to the entire population of Scotland and Wales combined. And half of them, 5 million, have already arrived. This is a demographic tsunami that threatens to wash away the Britain that we know and love. Now, some may argue that immigration has always been part of our history, and they're right. But what we're witnessing now is unprecedented in both scale and speed. Now, in the past, waves of immigration were largely European, particularly after the expansion of the EU in 2004. But this is different. We're seeing a massive surge of people from India, Pakistan, Nigeria and China. They're mostly coming on student visas, work and study visas, social care visas, and through our new points-based immigration system. The implications of this seismic shift are profound and far-reaching. By 2050, it's estimated that as many as 1 in 3 people in the UK will have been born abroad. 1 in 3. This isn't just change, it's a wholesale transformation of our society. And as Carl Williams, who's the research director of the Centre for Policy Studies, rightly points out, that's a huge amount of churn and something that is completely unprecedented. This rapid demographic shift is already causing ripples across our political landscape. We've seen the dramatic rise of Reform UK, a party that's advocating for a freeze on net migration and now leading in the polls. This surge in support is a clear indication that British people are deeply concerned about the pace and scale of this change. But it's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet or shifts in voting patterns. The real impact of this unprecedented immigration will be felt in all of our daily lives, in our communities, and in the infrastructure that supports our way of life. Let's consider housing, for instance. Where will these 5 million additional people live? We already face a backlog of more than 4 million houses that we need to build. Our cities are bursting at the seams, with green spaces disappearing under concrete and steel. And the character of our towns and villages is being irrevocably altered. Immigrants are primarily moving to our big urban centres, London, Leicester, Reading, Oxford and Cambridge. But these cities are already struggling with overcrowding and sky-high property prices. How much more pressure can they withstand? What about our public services? Our beloved NHS, once the envy of the world, is already on its knees. More than 6 million people are languishing on waiting lists, and our A&E departments are buckling under record-breaking delays. How will they cope with millions more patients? Our transport systems are creaking under the strain of our current population. Imagine the gridlock when we add millions more commuters to our roads and railways. Now, it's not surprising that 3/4 of our population believe that public services have deteriorated in just the past 5 years. And this is before the full impact of the immigration wave has hit us. But surely some might argue this influx of people will boost our economy. After all, aren't those migrants coming here to work? But the reality, sadly, is far less rosy. A minority of those who've come to Britain on the so-called Boris wave are employed. The majority are students and dependents. So although immigration does increase overall GDP, more people in the economy automatically makes the economy bigger, our GDP per capita has shrunk. The sheer scale of this immigration will fundamentally alter the character of our nation. It strains our resources, challenges our values, and tests the very cohesion of our society. So we must ask ourselves, is this the future we want for Britain? A future where our public services are overwhelmed, where our cities are unrecognisable, where Britain resembles an airport rather than a cohesive nation state? I believe we stand at a crossroads. The decisions we make now will shape the Britain of tomorrow. Will we be a nation that maintains its unique identity, its traditions, its way of life? Or will we become a land unrecognisable to those who built it, loved it and fought for it? The time for action is now. We must have an honest, open debate about immigration and its impact on our society. We mustn't shy away from difficult conversations for fear of being labelled as intolerant or racist. This is about the future of our nation, the legacy we leave for our children and grandchildren. We can have great respect for immigrants themselves without believing that multiculturalism is working or indeed beneficial. We need a comprehensive review of our immigration policies. We must consider implementing stricter controls, perhaps even a temporary freeze on net migration, as proposed by Reform UK. Or we should reform the rules on indefinite leave to remain, as proposed by the Conservatives. We need to heavily invest in our infrastructure and public services to cope with the population we already have, before considering adding millions more. And most importantly, we need to prioritise the needs and concerns of the British people. Our duty, first and foremost, is to those who are already here, who have contributed to this country and who have built their lives here. The choice is ours. The time to act is now. Thank you for watching. This is Miriam Cates, and don't forget to subscribe to our GB News YouTube channel for more.
I think what's troubling to me is hearing all the stories that we have over the last week. I mean, Darren spoke about, you've spoken about them, Will, and it does something to me as a British citizen. While I have paid a lot of tax all my life, I've tried to make a good life for myself, and even now at my age, 34, I'm struggling to be able to afford to buy a home. I'm still contributing more tax than I'm able to save, and there's a whole generation of young people in this country and elderly people now who are being made to suffer under this government, who have also paid tax their whole life, whilst there are people who come over to our country and get things for free, and also, in some very rare cases, put British citizens' lives at risk.